When we looked at things like the New York Times and the Wired magazine and the Times here, there was a sense where actually we pretty much got it on. You know, there was a systematic, repeated, these are the technologies that are important. And so you only have to look at the news, and in any given day, within one of the first 5 pages on the newspaper, there's going to be one of the technologies being explored. So let's take, for example, self-driving cars. So we're all been talking about Uber more recently, about the ethical issue, about what do we do when an algorithm should be deciding who it is you should prioritise when it comes to an accident. We talk about the fact that the LiDAR sensors, they used to have 5, but they brought it down to 1 sensor. And why was that? Was that a cost-saving exercise when the likes of other self-driving cars, Google's self-driving cars would have 6 sensors, and yet they decided to make the decision to put the sensors elsewhere? So was that a decision made by the previous executive team? Was that based on a profit basis? Because obviously it's a lot cheaper just to have the 1 sensor in place. So these are some of the questions we don't yet know. Volvo and Uber haven't come out and given us those answers. But that issue of where we put our values and where we prioritise, and when it comes back to the values of responsibility, you know, responsibility for our ethics, that was one of the things that we were really driving at. Again, we look at the stuff in the news the last couple of weeks, Cambridge Analytica. You know, there's no doubt whatsoever that, actually, how many people here are actually in marketing? So I don't know about you, but I didn't find it that big of news, because I was like, hang on, we've been doing this all the time, haven't we? You know, we've got friends, we've done it probably ourselves, where the whole focus was you spend 20 grand building an app, spend 20 grand promoting it, you got 500,000 people to touch point that, and then in due course you harvest all the data from all those other people. That's okay, isn't it? Well, at least that was okay, but different times calls for different measures, and actually, rightfully so, we're being called to account to say, actually, this data can't be used like that. We need to take a bit different measures on that basis. So I think there has been the rightful challenge, and it'll be interesting to see how Facebook and how Mark Zuckerberg responds to that, because at the moment he's right up against the rails, and with Elon Musk sort of turning around and diving in, sort of saying, yeah, I'm going to delete my page on Facebook with Tesla X and all the rest of it, and then equally we turn around and we look at the likes of, you know, the WhatsApp founder turning around saying delete Facebook, and the hype around that. But yeah, at the same time, I think we're growing increasingly discontent with our data being used like this. I don't know if anyone's looked up recently how much data Google's got on you. How many, just who's got a Gmail account? Majority of us. Okay, so just go to and get your phones out, google.com, takeaway. Just grab it out now, takeout, sorry. Google.com, takeout. / Google.com / takeout. And be slightly concerned, because that's the level of data that they have on you. And when you look to download that and you get the archive of that, and you actually ask the question, well, if someone was to be in a situation where they could hack into my email address, they could actually get access to that data, there is an employee that works within Google that could actually therefore use that data to someone inappropriately. You then got to ask yourself the question, am I happy with that level of data being available in the public domain? We went up in arms about the phone hacking situation a few years ago. Well, the amount of data that's on there, are we going to be seeing stories about that coming over the next few years? I'd have thought so. So yeah, I think it's really pertinent. And I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg in terms of many of these areas, because you know, we are having to grapple with how do we implement these into our businesses, and what are some of the ethical issues that we need to take on board.
Yeah, just to bounce, I love what you said. One of the things that we wanted to establish was some of these technologies have almost been around for a long time. And so we're like, oh yeah, well I get mobile, or I get social. But the reality is now, these are continuing to change, and the way we're using them, we have to sometimes put aside what we've learned already to rethink and reimagine how we're going to use it in the future. How many of you guys go to your settings in Facebook on a weekly basis? Good on you. and well, we should, because every time they do an upgrade, there's a chance that they just redo the settings, and you can get fooled very quickly. You don't know where they are. You're trying to grapple with them and understand what you're trying to get out of them. And I think that the Cambridge Analytica points out that we all need to be even more friendly and on a continuous basis with our settings to understand what we're doing with them, and then to have an ethical viewpoint. Because the more you know what's happening, the more you're going to be more instructed about and concerned probably about what's being done for your data.
Yeah, and I think people are having to transition. I was talking to an insurance company a couple of days ago, and they're nervous. because actually they've had a really good business model with all the data they've had access to. And no longer, a couple of years ago, there would have been a slightly smarmy attitude, hey, we can see the browsing history, we can see the messages sent, we can see the phone calls made, aren't we clever? And then a couple of days ago, when I was talking to the same guy a few years later, there isn't quite the same level of cockiness. It's actually, maybe we've been slightly the wrong side of the ethical line.
Drew, there was a few weeks or months ago, we had a session on GDPR here. It was a great session, and one of the panelists said, actually, GDPR is great sense. It's what we've been needing, and it's calling to task those who have gone out on a limb and maybe not been quite as responsible. And so, in the end of the day, fortunately in this case, maybe the law is catching up with what's right and catching those people who have been wrong in their ethical disposition.
Absolutely.
One of the funny things is that they tend to look at it as a single technology. Should we be doing AI, or should we be doing more? Whatever it might be, the topic. And basically, I find that they get it all backwards. Either the biggest two failings they have are they're trying to do everything and do it perfectly, or they're going after new shiny objects without any link to value. So that the issue is, and it's kind of painful, but it tends to highlight the fact that companies do not have a clear, well-communicated, and shared strategy. So this means that if that's not well shared throughout the organization, then it's going to be absolutely impossible for everybody to want to get on the change mindset because it's painful. And if you don't have that superior delta that gives us that energy to overcome it, then it will be a tall order to get everybody on board. So I was talking with a company yesterday, and this is the final piece of this one, and I'm not going to mention who it is, of course. So let me ask you, what's the mission of your company? And this is a C-suite of a very large organization, and he said, well, our mission is to have more profits this year. And how is that different from other companies? Well, I mean, our situation is that we need to sell more of these types of things, and so, okay. And what's your strategy? Well, first of all, we're going to cut costs. Okay, good. All right. So, in the reason why I mentioned that story is that in the end, the premise behind digital transformation should be according to your strategy, and your strategy should be according to your purpose. So, not only do companies not have a strategy, only a few even have a purpose. Because the key to digital transformation are the employees, the people who are doing the work. It's not the technology you choose. And the reason why those employees are going to get out of bed and do better and give us the 16% success rate is if it can be attached to a bigger purpose that's going to drive them and get them out of bed and just leap into this abyss and tackle challenges and break down silos and do things and suffer the ignominy of failure or mistakes. And I think so the lack of purpose is there. The challenge is if we don't get Wall Street or the city on board with this, and money continues to be accessible for the companies that have an ethically questionable leadership, then we have challenges. And we've seen recently BlackRock and Blackstone in the States showing up in this question. And one of them, BlackRock, sent a letter to all their funds saying, how are you essentially managing the ethical questions of the companies you're investing in? And they're not saying one way or the other you need to disinvest, but I think there's a raising it to the surface of this issue in the investment community. Because if we don't have them on board, we're going to be having challenges persuading CEOs who are responsible to shareholders for that.
What does it mean for all of us to learn to get our hands dirty? So again, another one of the models we explored was a slice of pie. How do you apply this technology on a personal basis? How do you apply it internally, then also how do you apply it externally to your stakeholders? PIE, yeah. And within that, one of the things that I found in terms of working with startups is that's great. I think we feel a lot more comfortable with that. We're familiar with the likes of Eric Rice's lean startup model. We build something, we measure something, then we learn from that. But in terms of some of these technologies, we're working at the moment with an air filtration company, coming up with some incredible solutions that really impact the way that we all breathe air at the moment, because we don't realise the impacts the lack of purity in our air has on our bodies, on our health, on the ability to be impacted by dementia, and a whole lot of different medical things which haven't really been explored as extensively as they should be. So they've come up with some groundbreaking technology, and a big part, the heart of that, has been 3D printing. Because the ability for them to build out a prototype, test it in their lab, adjust it, build it, measure it, learn it, has been so pivotal to them be able to embrace that technology and therefore move forward in the ways that they are doing. And there's no way they would have that level of accelerated growth that they've had over the last couple of years if it hadn't been, for example, for 3D printing. So I think for each one of us who are involved in our businesses, I think the crucial thing is, what is the technology that's right, that's really going to be the game changer for us? To get our hands dirty, to try it out. So when it comes to artificial intelligence, the biggest thing I often do right at the beginning of a project when I'm working with a client is say, can you just buy an Alexa, give it to your kid, and watch what your kid does with it. Watch what questions they ask. Like, watch the way that the mind naturally works. And then even as something as simple as that, as personal as my daughter Iona saying, Alexa, what's the answer to this? Suddenly that helps embody, okay, that really gives me an openness, a curiosity to how I might start to incorporate this into my business.
Caleb and I came to this idea of the CMO, and it's not the one you're thinking of, it's the Chief Mindset Officer. And ultimately, actually, so you need to be modeling the behavior you want everybody else to be doing. I have certain situations, for example, where the leader says, well, no, that's for you to learn. That's for you to do. And typically, social media is the perfect example where social media is very important. How much are we spending on it? And then, they get to find out the colossal sums of money that companies are spending or their teams are spending in Facebook or Google. And yet, none of them has any idea what it's like to be interrupted in the middle of their mobile screen in Facebook by some stupid retargeted ad about the car that I've already bought, for example. And in essence, they're making decisions in abstraction of what's going on and how it's being perceived by their customers. And so by not being fully using it themselves. So what I try to do when I'm working with companies, senior executives, is I try to get them to get their hands dirty. Typically, they're really good on this part. They've got, they read the Financial Times, and they might read Wired, but that's lucky. And some of them have a heart, even think that empathy and emotion is useful. Not so many of the men. And then very, very rarely they're not programmed to use their hands. But I'm going to take an example of this chap I got a chance to hang out with. He was running the large food, retailer called Carrefour in France. So he's the CEO of Carrefour France. He's called Noël Priou. And he said, I was so pissed off at our teams because we had very little traction and engagement on our social media. And so one day I decided that I would start an Instagram account. And within 6 months, I had more followers than the Carrefour's Instagram account. And Carrefour has some things that they can take photographs of. Think, Waitrose, just the food, any foodies in the house, whatever. There's so many things that are delicious to look at that they're selling. I'm thinking, any of you might be thinking that he got it because of who he is, because his name is CEO of Carrefour, right? That might be his reason. He didn't even have his name, position, or company on his title. So I said to Noel, as we're over having a couple of glasses of wine, so I said, how did you do it? He said, first of all, I have a passion for photography. And I love Nikon. His handle is Nikon_1. And okay, that's good. He said, second of all, my daughter. Of course. So she taught him everything about Instagram. Because if any of you have a daughter, keep your hands up. And if you have an Instagram account, and when your Instagram account's doing better than because your daughter helped you. Typically, anyway, that's happened for me. I have an 18-year-old girl who's just taught me how to, filter out my bad photographs, have an image going on throughout the stream. Anyway, so I'm learning through her. Anyway, the point is that Noël Priou And I can tell you, he is not a social media star, and certainly doesn't look like one. You know, he's sort of, you know, down to earth, but he's a leader of a large retail company. Anyway, so the story is that he got his hands dirty. Now Carrefour has an Instagram account that is kicking butt because he knows what it's all about. And I think that the issue at this point was that he had a strategic issue. He got his hands dirty in the area that needed to happen.
Yeah.
Found out about it, was the modeling behavior that he was wanting from the rest of the team, and then it happened. And by the way, he just got promoted. He's just taking over Latin America for Carrefour. So I don't know if that leads to this, but anyway.
Yeah, and I think the example there in terms of getting your hands dirty is one of the key responsibilities around the leadership piece. And I think another one that springs to mind is that sense of continuous learning, because so much of the time, again, within a corporate training type context, you wait for the training program, and then the training program comes along, and then you like it or you don't like it, as opposed to that sense of like, here's my problem, how do I use Instagram, what's going to be my solution to find the answers to that. And I love the reality that habit is so much more effective than willpower, because it's really hard for us to sort of have the willpower sometimes to do things. It requires a lot more energy. So what does it mean for us to develop the habits of continuous learning? What does it mean to put that into our days? You know, what does that mean for us to, when we're working with leaders, give them the very simple tools so that when they are sort of in their Uber or on their commute or whatever the scenario might be, that there is that ability just to be continuously feeding them, so when the point comes along where they don't know what to do with their Instagram account, they don't happen to have a really good daughter that can help them on that basis, they've actually got some signposts that there on that level as well. And I think probably for all of us, that's one of the gifts that we can give other people. I would imagine we're all quite well read. If you've read our book, then we appreciate that. But within that context, and if you haven't, there's some outside. No, but within that context, yes.
Is that the definition of well-read?
No, not far from it.
Well, that's why we chose the colour. We like well-read.
There we go, that's good. Thank you. But the reality is we've got the gifts and the deposits that we can give other people, haven't we? Because one would hope that we're trying to grapple and think through some of these issues. And I think one of the best gifts that we can give people is that opportunity to be exposed to other things.